Let us turn back the pages of time. Let us turn back to a time in history before the discovery of the New World. Back to a seaport in the Old World nearly 400 years ago. Let us wipe the page clean and draw our story on it fresh. Lisbon, Portugal. Ships, the excitement of discovery. New lands opening up to trade. Wealth pouring in from the coast of Africa. A stranger, a man who had been at sea for a number of years, arrived in this exciting town.
Can you tell me the way to the house of Bartolomeo Colombo, a map maker of your city? I am his brother, Cristoforo Colombo.
Cristoforo Colombo. Christopher Columbus settled in Lisbon and became a map maker with his brother.
Look, Bartolomeo. Some new charts from another Portuguese trading ship back from Africa.
The west coast of Africa was one of the parts of the world that was just being explored and mapped. Where no one had sailed, the map maker had to use his imagination, or simply leave the map unfinished. It was a frightening world to many. But not to Columbus or to the traders of his day. If one had ships, he could have wealth, great wealth, by bringing goods from far-off countries and selling them in the rich cities around the Mediterranean Sea.
These traders, these Portuguese, bring back gold and valuable cargo from the African coast, yes. But they have sailed south 1,000 leagues and still cannot find a way around that endless land to reach the Indies.
Here was the great prize, the Indies, the wealth of India, of China, of the Spice Islands. For centuries, traders had toiled across the vast spaces of the East, bringing silks and jewels and spices. The people of Europe could not make silk cloth, and they could not grow spices. They were willing to pay enormous prices to dress in finery and to make their food taste better. But this had stopped. Before Columbus was born, the violent hordes of Islam overran the trade routes. There were robber bands on land, pirates on the sea, and no trade. Columbus dreamed of this great prize, a new route to the Indies by water.
I tell you, Bartolomeo, these Portuguese traders go in the wrong direction. They try to reach the Indies by sailing east around this endless continent. By my calculations, it is near 3,500 leagues, even if one could go east in a straight line. Look you, we know the world is round. I will show it so by putting the two ends of this map together. It is 3,500 leagues to the Indies if you go east, but less than 1,000 if you sail west.
Sail west. Other people had considered this idea, but to Columbus, whose calculations told him that the Indies lay so near, it became a ruling passion. Columbus presented his plan to the King of Portugal, asking for ships and provisions. The king turned the proposal over to his advisors. These were wise men. They too made calculations. This man, Cristoforo Colombo, they said, thinks that it is this far from Portugal to the Indies by going east, and this far sailing west. But see, we estimate that the earth is larger than he does. thus. And we calculate that it is a lesser distance to the Indies going east, thus. Therefore, they said, it is a longer sail to the west than this young man thinks. The King of Portugal turned Columbus down.
No, Bartolomeo, you can stay with your map-making. I am going to the Indies. I will go by way of Spain or France or England, but I will not give up.
Another chapter in his life began. With his maps and his plans and his young son, he set out for Spain. There were only 4 or 5 countries in Europe that were wealthy enough to provide the ships for such an undertaking. Spain in those days was one of the wealthiest. He took his plan to the court of Spain, where it was presented to Ferdinand and Isabella. But those worthy rulers were in the midst of a war to push the Moors out of Spain. They would only say, "Not now, not yet." For 8 long years, Columbus was unable to get an answer at the court of Spain.
My friend, you believe in me. Now that this accursed war is over, submit my plan once again to their majesties, I entreat you. If the answer is no, I will go away.
Once again, Ferdinand and Isabella heard Columbus out. They studied his maps. Perhaps, after all, this proud stranger had a worthwhile plan. But then he told the king and queen what he wanted for himself.
May it please your majesties, beside the ships, I require upon bringing back proofs of my discovery these 4 things. Your majesty shall make me a knight. You shall make me admiral of the ocean sea. You shall make me governor of all new lands discovered. And may it please your majesties, I shall have 1/10 of the profits of all the trade in these newly opened lands.
Columbus had asked too much. He started off again, grim and determined, this time toward France. He was actually on the road when a messenger from the king overtook him and brought him back. A friend had persuaded the king and queen. They had changed their minds. At last, after 15 years of struggling for his dream, Columbus put to sea again. It was a moment of triumph. At dawn of a day in 1492, Columbus stood on the deck of the Santa Maria. He slipped out of the harbor of Palos, followed by the Pinta and Nina.
We make directly for the Canary Islands, older south-southwest.
These were brave seamen, bold men who had signed up for this fearsome voyage. Only the bravest would do so. 1492 was a time when most people without education still believed the world was flat, that ships disappeared over the edge. They believed that monsters might rise out of the deep. But even in 1492, there were seamen who could be persuaded for wealth and adventure to sail out into the unknown Western Ocean. And in such ships, the Santa Maria was only 117 feet long. The Pinta and Nina were only about 50, scarcely larger than a good-sized sailboat today. They were leaky and cranky. Yes, it took brave men to sail them out into the unknown. The first mishap of the voyage was a broken rudder on the Pinta. The crew patched it up well enough so they could get her into port at the Canary Islands. The Canary Islands. Here, while the Pinta was being repaired, Columbus fretted at the delay for 3 weeks. Finally, they stocked the ship's water barrels and took aboard what fresh food they could buy. They were ready to set out into the unknown. There is a great current in the Atlantic that flows in a huge circle, and prevailing trade winds that blow in much the same direction. Columbus knew nothing of these. By great good fortune, he chose to cross where the wind and current carried him swiftly. But it caused alarm among the crews. If the wind always blows west, they reasoned, how will we ever get home? How? Here was a real worry piled on a man's natural fear of the unknown. Nothing but water. As the days turned into a week, and the week into 2, the men grew restless. And then one day...
Look yonder! Some kind of great bird!
It is well known that pelicans never fly more than a few leagues from land. So evidently there are islands nearby. But the Indies we shall find further ahead. Keep on course.
The days went by. The wind blew westward. Often there were other signs of life to raise the spirits of the crew. Each evening, Columbus wrote an account of that day.
Today sailed through large patches of seaweed and therefore judged to be near some island.
On another day at sunset, there was a shout from the Pinta. Are they only distant clouds, some asked. But others looked and said, no, certainly it is land.
Let us give thanks to God.
But they sailed through the night. And as dawn lightened, there was only distant sky and water. Days passed. Some days brought hope, a flight of birds, a crab found floating in the seaweed. But each night, hope went down with the sun in the west. Columbus, too, had cause for worry.
Over a month. The men grow fearful. But certainly we shall land upon the Indies now any day.
The men had reached the end of patience. Somehow they must beat back home against this evil wind that blew ever westward. They told Columbus they would not go on.
3 days. Sail on for 3 days. If by that time I have not led you to the Indies, I pledge my word that we will turn back.
3 days were all that Columbus needed. In quick succession, they found a log, a green twig, a piece of wood shaped by some man's hand. Surely now the silks and spices of the Indies were only over the horizon. And the next night, for the second time, a cry came from the watchman on the Pinta. And in the morning, truly, land lay off the bow. These new lands Columbus named the West Indies. When he died many years later, he still did not know that the true Indies were still a continent and another ocean away. He did not find the wealth of the true Indies, the spices, jewels, and silks, but he found far greater wealth, a world, a new world, our world.